All right, everyone, today's video and plant of focus is cereal rye. Cereal rye has pros and cons just like any plant. So I'm going to start off with the cons to this plant and then go into the pros. It's a very short list of cons and a pretty good amount of pros to go with it. So I highly recommend having this type of plant in your food plot for those of you that like to do multiple species. So right now, by looking at this, a lot of people would think, my gosh, deer have got almost 2 feet, if not 2 feet of depth to chew on. So a new person that's never done this before may think, oh my gosh, look at how much biomass is here for the deer to eat on. This is one of the cons that occurs with cereal rye and your wheats. Once you see the stemming out stage, deer will quit eating this. Part of the problem is that when this becomes a stem, the nutrient flow or type of nutrient in the material here, your leaves, changes, and it becomes unpalatable to a deer. They don't like it anymore, and they will quit hitting all your cereal rye. Once you start seeing, that 4 or 5 inch long stem start developing, you might as well kiss your browse goodbye. So a lot of this food plot is no longer serving me for food. That's one of the lulls in the food plot that happens because of cereal rye. But it's still worth it to have it, and I'll explain more later here in a second. So another con to this particular plant can be the rate of growth. If you plant this really thick and you've got other species mixed in here, it can choke them out. Even though clover grows fast, I seem to notice crimson does better, or even purple top. Ladino doesn't get nearly as tall and can be shaded out to some degree, not all the time, but some degree. So you got to be mindful of that if you're looking for a certain set of goals in your food plot. I love multiple species, and that's why I do soil improvements. I have not added any fertilizer to this, and it's doing really well so far. All right, so any other cons that I can think of? Oh yes, do not let this seed out. It is a mistake for anybody that is new to this. Anytime you do a fall winter blend, the goal is not allowing this to seed out. So you will have a very large mistake if you do this and you're new to it. You may not know what to do or understand all the principles of food plotting. So that is a major con, is allowing this to seed out. So make sure you have plans to terminate this crop before the seeds are viable. Now let's move on to the pros of this particular plant. All right, a lot of people in terms of cereal rye often mistake it for rye grass. Rye grass is something deer will eat, but it is considered more of a starvation plant. Your attractiveness to your food plot actually goes down if you're using cereal or rye grass. I'm sorry. Rye grass is a no-no when it comes to food plotting, even though you're going to swear up and down the deer's eating it, but it's not the best you can give them. So an example would be this area here has a much higher protein content than the grass out here in my field, and deer eat grass. So a low percentage of their diet, you may see them out here in my field eating out here. And you're going to think, well, there's no difference between this and the cereal rye that's in here. Oh, the answer is there's a big difference. The protein level that cereal rye offers can be over 20%, especially with healthy soil. So don't be fooled when you buy a bag from the store and it tells you, hey, you're going to get, let's say, 32% of protein out of this plant. And you go have it tissue tested and it shows 12% or 15%. Maybe it says 24%. Your soil determines where your protein lands. So you have to make sure you have good soil in order to meet what they claim on the bag. Even getting the top end of your protein level is hard to do. So you anywhere close to it within 2 or 3%, you've done fantastic. So out here, and this is the big difference, when they're eating that grass, that's roughly 8, 9, 10% max protein, depending on which grass they eat. And then they come in here and they're getting something 20 or better. Your deer's going to get a lot bigger here. Over here, that's not really helping deer at all. It is more of a belly filler to me. That's just my opinion on that. But there might be some, what I consider roughage, fiber. There might be a certain grass out there that has a little bit of fiber content to it, and it can help flush out their guts. And that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. So that is one of the pros here, is the protein level that it provides. And this is only good for a certain amount of time. So the time you set it out until the time you see that stemming stage, you're going to have a lot of biomass for deer to eat on. This gets thick, it keeps regrowing, stemming out more and more. So you can see how one seed has turned into a whole cluster here, and that will help fill out your food plot, and it works great. Now, here's another thing that cereal rye is good for. We're going to get into a little bit deeper detail here. Cereal rye emits an enzyme in the roots and in the stems here that actually acts as a weed killer or weed suppressant. So there's an enzyme that leaches into your soil, and smaller seeds, like we're talking smaller than clover seeds, will have a very hard time germinating in conditions around cereal rye. So if you look under here, these are weeds that are grown away from the plant. So these are just like green tentacles that's reached into this zone. But if you pull it back, there's hardly any weedy material under here except for maybe right there. So a vast majority of this is being suppressed. It's having a hard time doing it. So when you come in here and you crimp down your food plot, for those of you that are no-till people, you have created a nice mat with extra weed suppressing ability. Using cereal rye and of course other mixes in it, you can reduce weeds as much as 95% in a healthy stand that is crimped over the top of the ground. That is a huge cost savings in fuel. Instead of digging and tilling this back in, you just run right over the top of it and crush it and kill it. The other option is, for those of you that can't do that, you can bush hog this down, and some people do spray it down, kill it, and then plant their new stuff right through it. I am a person that only sprays out of necessity, and I try to limit that as much as I possibly can. When I first started this plot, the ground was so poor, it was spraying 2 or 3 times a year. That's how bad this started off being. And now I'm down to once a year. In some cases, I may actually go spray free this year, depending on how this turns out, at least in a certain portion of it. So we have some other good things here that's going on. Each plant here that you put in here leaches carbon into the soil. So these roots are very extensive under the ground, and this plant can pump some carbon back into your soil. So if you have white colored dirt or red colored, like red clay or something, that soil is not considered healthy soil. Healthy soil looks black. If you can get it black, you have some of the healthiest ground around. And by growing this right here where it creates tons of biomass, it's pumping carbon into your soil, you've got the benefits of healthier soil beginning in your ground. Now, the biomass part of this is that cereal rye can grow very tall. This may look tall to you now for anybody that's new to this, which is about 2 feet. Some places are a little taller. This will grow as high as 7 feet. I have seen it here a couple of times now that my ground is getting better and better. I have seen this as deep as 7 feet. On average, you could probably do 5 and 6 feet deep. and that is still considered a very good stand. Once you drop below 5, you might want to look at improving your soil even more, but it's a good gauge to see where you're at, and I'm going to find out where this lands this year because I haven't put any fertilizer on it. That is one of the lovely pros here, and once you do mat this down, there are so many benefits when you kill this off. For those of you that are no-till people, if you see the seed is in that like doughy stage where you squeeze it and water pops out of it, you need to start crimping this down. Don't let the seed harden. And that's a good tip for when to do this if you're that type of food plotter. As far as other pros, it actually attracts earthworms to some degree. There's some links and studies that I will be posting at a later time that ties into what plants draw what type of worms, how big they get, how many more you can get on average. It is amazing the intel depth that they go to now. And this plant helps draw in earthworms. So imagine this right here where it's 5 to 7 feet deep, how much food is available for the worms. You're going to have a worm farm under here, and it's going to generate all kinds of free fertilizer for you. So I think I've pretty much covered it, and I'll add more if need be. You all have a great day.